We really believe that the people that are closest to the challenges are the people that need to be leading the discussion.
You want to hear from the source, right? You want to hear they can teach you more than what your preconceived ideas are about the community.
I'd like to welcome everybody to this podcast, and I'm Jaime Wesolowski. I'm the very proud president and CEO of Methodist Healthcare Ministries of South Texas, and I'm joined by someone that really needs no introduction, but award-winning journalist, author, motivational speaker, and the host of a show that's been running now for 18 years. What Would You Do
That's
on
right.
ABC?
Wow, it's a long time.
That sounds amazing when I say 18 years, right?
Yeah.
So John,
yeah.
thank you
Oh, what a
so
pleasure.
much for
Jamie,
joining me.
I love the work you guys do, and I'm just happy to be here. It's an honor. It's an honor.
So how have you been adjusting to Aspen so far?
Well, I just got here this morning, so I'm a little out of breath. What is it, 11,000 feet above sea level? I think the city is 8,000. But I love it. I used to live in Park City, Utah, which was in the mountains also. We took the family there, and we lived there for 10 years. So I love the fresh air. It's not like Texas, right? It's not humid
You
and hot.
don't mind it, huh?
No, it's great. Yeah.
Well, I thought I'd start by telling you a little bit about our company very briefly so that I could tell you why I'm so excited about this podcast. And our company is Methodist Healthcare Ministries, and we are a faith-based, not-for-profit organization. We're based in San Antonio, Texas. We take care of 74 counties, so basically a third of the state of Texas.
Wow.
And we also own the largest hospital system in South Texas, Methodist Healthcare. And from that, we take the proceeds and we do what we can to take care of the least served in South Texas. So it's truly a blessing to be associated with Methodist Healthcare Ministries. Well, long story short is we are celebrating our 30-year anniversary, and we wanted to do something special for our incredible team members. So we rented out the Alamo Dome, and we went on the floor of the Alamo Dome, and I wanted to get the best speaker I possibly could. So we went through a lot of possibilities, and it was obvious that John Quiñones would be the best keynote speaker for us. And I just want to let you know, he resonated so well with our team members, inspired them, and they are still talking about some of your stories.
Oh, man, thank you.
And so from that day, I decided if it's at all possible, I want to somehow do a podcast with you, so the rest of the country can hear your story.
Thank you. I haven't done that many podcasts, believe it or not. I'm so busy with the television part of it. But so this is a joy, and you're getting a bit of a first.
Absolutely. Well, I haven't done many either. So anyway, thank you for being so honest and speaking from the heart and being free with your story, because not everybody wants to tell their story.
Yeah.
So would you start like you started with us and talk about your the early years and the challenges and barriers you faced with you and your family faced?
Absolutely. We grew up in the barrio of San Antonio, on the west side of San Antonio. I went to Carvajal Elementary, Rhodes Junior High. Really poor. I mean, my father, we worked hard, full of love, my family, 2 sisters and me, and my mother and father. And my dad worked cutting down trees for the Asplin Tree Company, and then as a janitor at my high school, Brackenridge. And then my mom used to clean houses on the rich part of town in Alamo Heights. We struggled, and then one year my dad was laid off, and I didn't speak Spanish, by the way, English. Growing up, no English, because we all spoke Spanish at home. And in San Antonio, where 60% of the population is Latino, we didn't have to. When I went to the first grade, I'll never forget going into Mrs. Gregory's class, and I'm sitting there at 6-year-old little Juanito Quiñones twiddling my thumbs because the teacher didn't speak Spanish and I didn't speak English. And at 10 in the morning, the school bell rings and all the kids go outside for recess, right, to the playground. Where does little Juanito Quiñones go? I walked home. I lived a block from the school, and I thought it was over. I went to my mom, and she goes, Juanito, ¿qué pasó? What happened? And I said, it's over, Mom. Se acabó. I love school. 2 hours, and you're done. It was that tough. I learned English, thankfully, but when I was 13, we became migrant farm workers because my dad was laid off. We picked cherries in Michigan and tomatoes in Ohio. And I'll never forget being on my knees at the age of 13 at 6 in the morning, a cold, wet morning, looking at a row of tomato plants that for a young 13-year-old boy's eyes seemed to go on for miles and miles. That's what I had to look forward to that day, picking tomatoes for 35 cents a bushel. And my father, Bruno, saying, Juanito, do you want to do this kind of work for the rest of your life? Or do you want to go to college someday and get an education? It was a no-brainer. I knew then that I wanted to go to college. But when I came back to my school, Rhodes, my teachers, I would ask, how do I prepare for the ACTs, the SATs? How do I take college, prep program classes? And my own teachers would say, Johnny, it's great that you have this dream of someday being a TV reporter. Because I wanted to be a reporter since I was 12. I used to watch Geraldo Rivera on 2020. And they would say, it's great that you have this dream, but we think you should try wood shop or metal shop or auto mechanics. Not that there's anything wrong with those great trades. A lot of people make a good living doing that. But I wanted to go to college. And my own teachers and my own counselors didn't believe that I was material. Maybe they were looking out for me. Maybe they didn't want me to be heartbroken and rejected by a college. But thank God for my mother Maria, man. My mother Maria, she was pushing and inspiring. She would say, Mijo, it doesn't matter that you have to wear the same clothes to school every other day. At least we wash them. They're clean. She would say, Mijo, don't be embarrassed about having to take bean and tortilla tacos for lunch. When all the other kids are taking their fancy bologna and white bread, she would say, that doesn't matter. What matters is what's in here, in your cabeza, in your brain, and what's in here, in your heart, in your corazón. And she's the one that kept me going. So, but it was a struggle. It was a struggle.
A lot of challenges.
Yeah.
A lot of challenges.
Well, now, when we were sick, speaking of Methodist, we couldn't afford. We had to go to the emergency room. We had no insurance. We had no doctors. And my little sister, Rosemary, used to have convulsions when she was little. And I remember rushing through the streets of San Antonio, down Guadalupe Street, heading to Robert B. Greene Hospital, was the county hospital, and waiting in the emergency room for hours and hours with my mom cradling my sister with very little attention because we didn't have any money.
Mm-hmm. Well, at Methodist Healthcare Ministries, we have had the blessing to learn how to work in communities, and we've learned that communities truly have the solutions, but you have to spend time and talk to them and listen to them and get their perspectives, because if we use our perspectives, they're going to be biased, right? Our perspectives are not going to be good unless we truly have listened to them. So we really believe that the people that are closest to the challenges are the people that need to be leading the discussion. And that's one of the biggest valuable things that Methodist Healthcare Ministries has learned. So I love you telling your story. It helped us so much. And I'd be interested to hear, what type of, how people were influenced, I guess, by, when they saw you in the early years and when you and your family were struggling. And did you feel heard during that time? Were people listening to you?
No, I was just another Mexican kid from the West Side, in the eyes of the rest of the community. Our community was wonderful, St. Timothy's Catholic Church, the people in my community, we all got along, but we wanted to go beyond that. We wanted to be accepted by the community that lived on the North Side and then on the East Side. I didn't have any black friends until I wound up going to college. So, and when we were picking tomatoes in Ohio and cherries in Michigan, I remember we would walk around a store, and because we spoke Spanish and because we weren't dressed, we were kind of dirty from picking vegetables, people would follow us around in the store thinking we're going to steal something. And that's where I based a lot of my what would you do scenarios, What would you do if you see someone being accused of stealing simply because they're African American or because they're Mexican American? We weren't treated very well, and I had to fight. I had to fight for everything that I ever got. But, you talk about hearing stories. You want to hear from the source, right? You want to hear, they can teach you more than what your preconceived ideas are about the community. Peter Jennings, who was the anchorman at World News Tonight at ABC, my hero. I'll never forget one time I was covering stories in Central America. I used to cover Nicaragua, El Salvador, Panama, Colombia, Guatemala, Cuba. And one time a big interview fell through with the president of Nicaragua. I had this big interview scheduled, a big exclusive interview, and then he backed out. And I had to tell Peter Jennings in New York, I was in Nicaragua, that what I had promised him, I wasn't going to be able to deliver. And I thought I was going to get yelled at or fired because my interview fell through with the president of Nicaragua. And Peter Jennings said to me, John, listen to me. Don't worry so much about talking to the movers and shakers of the world. You know, the politicians, the presidents of companies and universities. Don't worry about talking to the movers and the shakers of the world. Concentrate on talking to the moved and the shaken. In other words, talk to the real people. They are the ones who have the real story.
People that have the lived experiences.
Absolutely.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Right. So, that's why we thought of the title of this podcast is "What Could You Do?" Based on John's show, "What Would You Do?" What could you do? The power of perspective. We want to really focus on that perspective of those that we should be listening to. So, talk about your life experiences and how those experiences inspired you to want to become a journalist and a reporter and tell the story.
Well, because I wasn't seeing our stories on the air. And when I grew up in the barrio, nobody would talk about the heroes in my community. It was all about drugs, about gangs and violence and illegal immigration. And I knew there were heroes in my community. I knew who could tell those stories better than anyone. Me, someone from that community. And then on television, I didn't see a lot of people who looked like me. Back then, they just didn't hire a lot of us because we hadn't had the experience to be network correspondents, because we hadn't been hired by the local stations to gain that experience and then someday go to the network. So I was on the cutting edge of that. And there was a group in San Antonio called the Bilingual Bicultural Coalition on the Mass Media.
Oh, wow.
There were these radical brown beret wearing guys that were protesting, and it was during the civil rights movement back in the 70s. And they started picketing in front of radio and TV stations. And their argument was that the airwaves in this country, radio and TV stations, the airwaves don't belong to them or Comcast or Westinghouse or any big broadcast company. They belong to the people of America. And therefore, you should hire people who represent the community that you're serving. And you should hire more Latinos in San Antonio, where 60% of the population is Latino. You should hire more. And that was my step in. That was what got me in. Because of them, I was hired as an intern at the age of 18, right after St. Mary. Well, I was right as a freshman at St. Mary's University at a radio station, KKYX, a country music station.
Oh, my gosh.
But it was because somebody pushed and shoved and demanded and protested and picketed and said to these station managers, if you don't hire people who represent our community, then we're going to ask the Federal Communications Commission in Washington to deny your license for broadcasting. Yeah. And that freaked the owners of TV and radio stations out, because that's their ticket to print money, is to broadcast. And they started hiring more people who looked like me. But early on, oh man, it was a struggle. Had it not been for groups like that, the Brown Berets, the Bilingual Bicultural Coalition on the Mass Media, who call themselves the BBC.
Really?
The BBC made it possible for me to get into television. Yeah, I mean, that was the first step. And then there was a program called Upward Bound that allowed kids from the inner city, gave us extra courses in math, biology, and English in high school. Well, I was at Brackenridge High School in the 10th grade, in the 11th grade. In the summers, I would get to go live at Texas State University in San Marcos. During the Saturdays, they would give us extra courses in math, biology, and English. It's what you're doing, with MHM. You're doing that service that, God, government doesn't always provide. And then there was that, I know you wanted to ask me about a hero that I've had, right?
Yeah.
And it was my English teacher, among my parents, who were my first heroes, of course. But my English teacher at Brackenridge, Mrs. Gutierrez, who when I was in the 10th grade, She said, Johnny, come here. I love the way you tell stories. I love the way you write your essays in English class, in literature class. Have you thought about journalism? I said, yeah, I've been watching Geraldo on TV. She said, no, I think you should talk to the man who runs the school newspaper at Brackenridge, Mr. Harris. And I was hired as a reporter for the newspaper at the school. So I've been doing this reporting stuff since I was 13 years old. When all the other teachers had said, you're not college material, that one hero, that one teacher at Brack said, you are, and you can do this.
Oh, that's heartwarming, really, and that's really what we try to do. Like you said, and like you know our background. And
Sure.
it's great to hear those stories of people that really helped you in that journey that got you to where you are now. And so many people that we care for they just need a friend. They just need some help. Sometimes it's not a whole lot, but a little bit of help and someone that will be their hero and their colleague just means so much.
They want to be heard. They want to be seen. There's a great book that I just read called How to Know a Person by the author David Brooks. He's a New York Times journalist. And he points out in the book that the quality of our lives and the health of our society depends to a large degree on how well we treat each other in those minute interactions of our daily lives. He says, if there's one skill that lies at the heart of any healthy person, any healthy organization, any healthy family, community, society in general, it's that ability. If there's one skill, it's the ability to see someone else deeply and to make them feel seen, to really get to know someone else and to let them feel valued, heard, understood. And that truly is at the heart of being a good person and a good organization. Is the ultimate gift, I think, that we can give to others and that we can give to ourselves.